Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.
And very good morning to you. This is Newsline, live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo, and running a touch late. Many apologies for that. Our guest this morning is the former head of the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka, Mr. Upul Jayasuriya. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Faraz.
And it's lovely seeing you after a while on the program. Many things are happening, but I thought this thing caught my eye. A lead story in the Mirror just a couple of days ago, it says that the BOI says projects worth over $16 billion, that's with a B, $16 billion under discussion with Singapore. That's a lot of money, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, it's good news.
It's good news, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, these are all pledges, aren't they? These are sort of proposals.
They're in the form of proposals, yes, of course.
So, how much, in your experience, how much of these proposals are converted into real money?
Well, you can't tell that in a general form.
Right.
Well, some proposals don't take off the ground at all.
Right.
Well, as you know, at the BOI for a month, we have been cancelling projects. Maybe if you take the number of projects, something in the region about 15 to 20 projects
are cancelled by the BOI.
Cancelled by the BOI for non-implementation.
Ah, okay.
So
these are proposals made by whoever, and they don't.
No, but I suppose there must be some involvement by the government, the two governments, as the minister says. So there must be some government backing from Singapore as well as from Sri Lanka.
Right. Right. Well, it says here that it's 4 projects worth over $16 billion US dollars. And the largest amongst these projects is one project which is an export-oriented oil refinery, $14.8 billion to be based in Hambantota. Who are they going to compete with?
No, I think the issue is whether we are going to do the refinery ourselves by the government of Sri Lanka or allow some private investors to do it.
Right.
The investment is colossal. So I don't think the government has a capacity to make that kind of investment in oil refinery, because I think the refineries that we were having were not functional. So at that stage we had the only option would have been to have the refinery. The question was who was going to make the investment. I think this is the same thing that should apply to LNG, where there are about 5 investors who are in the queue waiting to invest, and their investments were in the region of about at least $5 billion.
So
but none of them were given the approval, and then if the government is now contemplating to set it up on its own and then make the investment from the government, I think that's a disaster. Because
because
there is not a single government investment that is doing well. Government can't manage business. No country, government gets involved in business. That should be given the opportunity to the private sector. So the investors are waiting with many billions of dollars to come in and then do it here in Sri Lanka without giving them. If you are setting it up ourselves with government investment, now Lanka.Upul is a government company. It's owned by the CEB. And if you are giving it to Lanka.Upul, it's total disaster. Because then the procurement process takes place the way that they want to do.
And that in turn leads to all the potential for corruption. Definitely.
That should never be tolerated or encouraged.
And I see here they say, over 16 billion. So one project's on its own 14.8 billion. And then they say another one, a steel manufacturing plant in Trincomalee with $1 billion investment there. Who are these people willing to invest money like this?
I don't know, but at the moment there is a steel industry in Sri Lanka. All the steel is imported to Sri Lanka. There one big company that was involved, that have been given all the privileges by the then government, making it a strategic development project, and that was on the basis that they were going to do an import substitution by 2016 up to $125 million.
Right.
But when we studied it, we found that it was not $125 million. The import substitution has taken place only to the extent of $11 million.
Right.
So it's not even 10%.
Right.
So then I was going to cancel that project. Because they have, on the basis of that, they have got cess-free, VAT-free, so they have had an edge and an advantage against all the other manufacturers.
Right.
And tax-free. So,
and tax-free.
And tax-free.
Yeah.
And they have been given the monopoly for a 7-year period. So you have to carefully look at these things and what they are asking and what they would be given.
Right.
Other than that, I mean, oil refinery is definitely, it's a must. But I think there was also some reference to a sugar refinery.
Yes. What about that then?
If you are talking about sugar refinery, then that means what's going to happen to our local farmers?
Yes.
At the moment, Sri Lanka is producing about maximum 12 to 15% of the sugar requirement. That's about maximum 75 to 100,000 tons, where our requirement is about 700,000 tons a year. So there are 3 companies which are now all state-owned. Originally they were state-owned, but they were given to the private sector, but they were taken back to the government. And there are about at least 100,000 people who are employed in that. No sooner you bring the refineries, then you are putting the local sugar industry in jeopardy. Now, new sugar industries that are to come in here, one is the Kantale sugar that has to be, there's a restructuring of the Kantale sugar project that we have. And secondly, there was another one that was that has come and they have been tapping on the door for a long time. I did my best to push it through, but the bureaucratic bungling and then, the problems, as you know, the problems that were faced by even Kantale sugar, they have still not been able to take it off.
Right.
And that again is a $350 million investment. And they were going to invest in to do this sugarcane plantation in Vaunia. So direct and indirect employment was going to be in the region of about 100,000.
Right. And so why isn't a project like that being pushed?
These are the problems. Now then Kantale sugar, take Kantale sugar. BOI agreement was signed in, I think, July 2015. The shareholders agreement has been signed more than a year ago with the government. $100 billion was the investment, out of which 51% shares were given to the government free of charge.
Right.
And for that, this public official who got into the middle of it was asking for a bribe to give the used machinery to the investor.
Right.
And he was trying to sell the used machinery for scrap iron. And also, there were about 500 houses that were put up by the government at that time for the use of the employees. He was going to demolish them and then sell the bricks. Now, is it sensible? Now, this kind of public officials should not be sent to jail. They must be hung. They must be hung.
Yeah, actually, it's true. Why expend time and energy and money on keeping them behind bars when they've clearly failed?
The death sentence should not only be brought for the drug offenders, whether repeated or otherwise, but even these public officials who are sitting on most of these projects, that the investors can't just go through these people. The politicians with all good intention, they are trying to bring the investment. All that we can do is to bring them to our doorstep. But if the public officials take the lead and then say, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, there's nothing that can move. There are so many investments that are in jeopardy because of the public officials' inaction or corruption.
It's a very serious situation, isn't it? In terms of Singapore, and they talk about the 16 billion and so on, and Singapore seems to be a new sort of darling of this government anyway. I find that there's a lot of talk about Singapore this and that. But shouldn't then the Singapore also sort of return the favor? It's not a favor, but to be reciprocal about various matters. And what about the issue of the extradition or the return to Sri Lanka, at any rate, of Arjuna Mahendran to help the police in their inquiries?
Your pet topic. I'll start from Singapore being the darling of Sri Lanka. Yes, of course. Singapore was a role model when President Jayasuriya started the open economy in Sri Lanka with the BOI. Lee Kuan Yew came to this country a couple of times, and we were the second in the entire region. So there is no question that Singapore is doing the best in all the ease of doing business and everything.
Yes.
Such a small, tiny thought they have as far as the land bank is concerned. But their investment is much higher than, maybe 1,000 times higher than Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So if you can get a fraction out of Singapore to this country, I think that's something that we should all be looking forward for.
Right.
Right. Now, coming back to your pet topic about this one, the bond scam and the Arjun Mahendra. I'm not sure whether, I can't tell you offhand whether there is a extradition treaty with Singapore.
What happens if there is no extradition treaty?
If there is no extradition treaty, we have our extradition law that is applicable only within Sri Lanka.
Right.
So then it's the good officers of, the Singapore government decides not to extradite one of its own citizens. That's up to them to decide. There is no way that you can do that. I think the same problem was faced with one of the Middle Eastern countries where Udhyanga Viratula was hiding.
Yeah.
I think there again we don't have extradition treaty. We have many extradition treaties, but with regard to Singapore, I'm not sure. I can't tell you offhand.
The thing is, in that case, shouldn't we in Sri Lanka take a hard line stance? After all, there was that house in Malwana, there was that house in Mathura, and people just suddenly said, oh well, no, it's not mine. We don't know. So we own the land, we don't know who turned up in the middle of the night and built this 210 million rupee mansion. So quite rightly, the government said, well, since there's no owners, we'll take it over then, shall we? And that's what they've done. Now then, if you can be so hardline on that and say, well, if there's no owner, it belongs to the state, and take it on, in that case, isn't it time that the government then identified all the different assets being held in this country by that family and completely take it all over and say, these are proceeds of crimes. We're going to try you in absentia and pay the penalty. It appears to me that now nobody's talking about the second bond, the one that started on the 31st of March 2016. Because the Presidential Commission of Inquiry, their term ended, the period they were looking at ended on the 31st of March 2016. Now, there is more money beyond that date. It's about 6 billion over there. No one's in profits. No one's talking about that. And in my mind, Upul, and I'm not a lawyer, but in my mind, the Presidential Commission of Inquiry were very clear. They said that Arjuna Mahendran had acted mala fide in the interests of perpetual treasuries, and they made these profits.
I think what they said was that there is a prima facie case.
Yeah, so they wanted them to look into it. Yeah. Now, if that is the case, then, in my view, the second bond and the proceeds and all that, to me, it seems that is a proceeds of crime, because the crime was committed earlier, and here nobody's even looking at it. So if that's the case, why can't they get a bit proactive and say, no, we're going to take it all over, we're going to take your assets, we're going to seize your assets?
I'm with you, Faraz, on that. The second bond, of course, yes, it must be investigated, and if there is any corruption, they must be brought to book.
Yeah.
But also, there's a third bond. The third bond was not one, the large number of bonds, all of the government. Now, in both these instances, what you call as the first and the second bond instances, they bought the bonds and then made a profit that the others were not able to make.
Correct.
And they sold it.
Yes.
Right? So they have made a profit that others were not able to make.
Yes.
So therefore, they say that others could have bettered their rate of interest that they offered in the bond. Now, as far as the other bond is concerned, I call it the first bond.
Yeah.
I call it the first bond. That is entrust.
Right.
Entrust is something where the central bank's money.
That's right.
Public Debt Department, EPF Department.
Why are they all silent on these matters?
Regional Development Department. Now, these departments also have excess funds from time to time. Now, it's a stupid system of the central bank that if the central bank have got idle funds, they have to go to a private sector company to buy the bonds. Now they went to a company that had so many relatives of the previous regime, and they bought the bonds. Not only that, and CEB also another 2.5 billion worth of bonds, 3.5 billion. So altogether about 10 billion, over 10 billion. Private sector people also have placed money in this company for the purpose of purchasing bonds. So all are very happy, and then they were relaxing, saying that the company has bought the bonds. But a month or two later, they realized that all these bonds have been sold. So it's not the interest part. The capital plus interest both have been sold and then appropriated.
So this is the whole point. The bond seems to have, or the methodology of bonds seems to have been the easy way out for these all sorts of people to make money at the expense of others. And we have a viewer who's telling us that isn't it worth considering breaking diplomatic relations with Singapore if they refuse to understand Sri Lanka's agony and need to bring back Arjuna Mahendran?
That's a far-reaching statement and a far-reaching step. I don't think for a moment that nothing, not only Arjuna Mahendran should break the diplomatic relations with the country, a democratic country. I don't think in the history of Sri Lanka, or for that matter any other country, other than when the country's security was at risk, that they have ever broken diplomatic relations. But the government can talk to the Singaporean government, and I don't know whether the request has been made so far, and seek the extradition of, if you don't call it extradition, like you can do like what they did with KP.
Yes, that's right. They can be renditioned. Mysteriously, the plane decides to make a detour, and it lands here, and tough luck. So then you get arrested. Many years ago, the Americans, the DEA, they did the same to a chap by the name of Malik, who was a Pakistani national, and he thought he was quite safe to travel, and he was on a PIA flight that was making a technical stopover in Frankfurt. It was only a technical stopover. The Americans came and took him off the plane at Frankfurt, and he wasn't even off the plane. It was only a technical stop, and they renditioned him to the US, where he served a lengthy sentence. If I'm not mistaken, he might still be alive. But this is what they ought to be doing with these others.
Well, Americans,
but they did that with KP.
Americans have their own way of doing things. Even what they have done in the past, even with regard to Sri Lanka, is with countries that they don't have treaties. For instance, they don't have treaty with Russia. Now recently they were trying to extradite a Russian who came to Sri Lanka, who was on a visit in Sri Lanka. So they have been watching him, and then they made the application for the extradition of the guy. Now the thing is, even in the extradition treaty, it does not, in my interpretation of it, it does not apply to a third national. Third national. But they try to get him out of Sri Lanka. So much so there now, right at the moment, there's another case that I'm handling where the national of, again a third country, Beirut, Lebanon, is being sought by the Americans without any evidence. So the investigators can't come and say that.
And where would this person be? In Sri Lanka?
At the moment he's in Sri Lanka. So, but the Sri Lankan treaty with USA, though it's about a couple of decades old, does not provide for a third national to be dealt with on the soil of Sri Lanka.
I see. So there's a bit of a technical problem there. But on that note, let's go for a quick break because the control room wants that. Don't go away. After all, this is Newsline.
With Faraz Shauketaly.
And welcome back to Newsline, where we're in the last few minutes of it. Now, Upul Jayasuriya, you mentioned about this, about Kantale sugar and getting it going again. What is the problem here? What are these officials waiting for? Are they waiting for bribes?
Of course, we have all seen that story unfolded in the eyes of the public, and it is very sad because more than a year ago, maybe 1 year and 4 months, sometime last year, sometime in March, I even had a press conference and said that these officials, including the one who is behind bars, he's asking for a bribe. He's asking for a bribe. And the investor was complaining. So I insisted that he should not pay this bribe. And if he paid this bribe, I said, don't ever come to the BOI.
So you mean he openly told you that there was somebody...
The investor was complaining to me that this guy is asking for a bribe. So finally what happened was, I think he was helpless because this is the same guy who was misleading the ministers also. The ministers don't know what's happening there. So when a permanent secretary of Ministry of Land comes and says, look sir, that, so they tend to believe that. So he misled a 3-member ministerial committee, and they got the ministerial committee to decide to terminate the sugar project. So I don't know whether they knew what they were talking about. They shouldn't have taken the face value of what this officer was telling. So finally, it has now ended where it is. We all know the situation. But this is not only one, this is the tip of the iceberg. That's where the problem is.
That's frightening.
This is frightening. Now, nobody would have taken any notice of this issue until this matter was brought to light. If it didn't happen, Kanthala Sugar would have been another project that would have been closed down after many years of attempts to carry on with the project. That's about it all. Now, we are allowing other people to come and set up refineries. Now, what is the labor intensity of the refineries if they put up refineries? That's not even 1,000 people, I suppose. But whereas you allow a plantation to take place, reap the harvest, and then process the thing, there are about nearly 50,000 people, families who will be benefited out of that. Now you stop that by giving these refineries to have their process, which is a short process in Sri Lanka. Bring the sugar, brown sugar, and then process it and make it white sugar and then sell it here. But all the farmer families, they are in the lurch.
They're in the lurch.
They are in the lurch. Now the existing sugar industries, and the sugar industries to come up, the one that I said about Vaunia and Kantale, I mean, they will be killed in the embryo stage. So this is fairly serious. Now even there was a similar situation with regard to shoes. When I was there at the BUI, I cancelled the project. That was Section 16 project. I cancelled it on the basis when we found that the local industry was going to be killed. Because whatever the investment that we are going to make in Sri Lanka, and that was $250,000 investment. A huge Indian company was coming to set up a factory with a $250,000 investment, and our people who have been involved in, like people like DSI, these are well-known names. They have made so much investment, so much effort. There are so many people who are employed, who are involved in the business, and they are all going to close down. So then finally, when I found that the BOI under normal circumstances, they have given the approval, we cancelled that. We cancelled that because we have to protect the local industry. Investment can't be at a cost. Investment is for the purpose of providing opportunities, bringing technical know-how.
And enhancement. And
enhancement of the product. And finally, it should help the people of this country. For that purpose. It's not the number of dollars that come into the country. If you want a number of dollars, if you're looking at that option, if you open it tomorrow, there will be so many robber barons, as President Jayawardena said, we opened for robber barons then when we started the BOI. There will be so many robber barons who will bring the money into this country. That's not what we want. There should be some development that should take place along with these investments.
Finally, what do you think about this business about Singapore? Can we not put the Singaporeans on hold until we have Mr. Mahendran back?
That's again a tough decision.
tough decision. But surely, little Sri Lanka, they must surely feel that here's this little tiger fighting along. And, they eradicate terrorism and so on. So here's this little creature trying to get its claws in. And nobody wants to know. They're just kind of knocking them down.
But that's a diplomatic decision. That's a high, very sensitive issue for the government. Do we have enough
statesmen with the stature that would be internationally respected to have a discussion with another contemporary leader and say to him, listen mate, I love it all, but you're going to have to return this chap to me.
Sri Lanka has enough people with stature, but the problem is whether those people with stature are in power or not. Whether they are holding authoritative positions in the government where they could excel in their intelligence and the capabilities. So, but we are stuck with the people that we have, whichever the party. I'm saying without any prejudice on either party.
Yes.
Whichever the party. This is a problem that we have. But I don't think, as a former chairman of the BOI, I still have a love for that place.
Yes.
We have to do well in our investments. The officers there are doing a great job in breaking their necks and they're trying to bring the investment and facilitate them. But it's the other people who are blocking this. So in that scenario, when Singapore is the best in the list of ease of doing business, it's a role model for any country, not only Sri Lanka. If we are to take that kind of a drastic step, I think Sri Lanka will be doomed.
But we need to push our point as well.
Yeah, we need to push it. That's where you need the diplomatic relations, diplomatic acumen to do what we want to do in a better way.
Perhaps we need to have career diplomats in
Career diplomats for us is also not the panacea for all these issues. We always talk of intelligentsia and the educated people. Sometimes when the educated people take the seat, sometimes there is disaster. You need more practical people. People of the men of the soil.
Yeah.
Mr. R. Premadasa was a man of the soil.
Indeed.
And he had a lot of vision. Take Prime Minister D.S. Senanayake. He was a man of the soil.
Yeah.
Though he studied at St. Thomas, he didn't study much there.
Yeah.
But he was a man of the soil.
Right.
The vision that they had. Of course, Jaya Jayawardena was the only exception. He was an educated man. And he had the vision for this country. Whoever,
he was educated at Royal.
He was educated also at Royal. But he had a vision for this country.
Well, it's all very sad. I hope it all works out. What's your lasting belief? What will happen? Will we just splutter along? Will FDI just be merely
I think the government has to be very careful and look at, even the BOI, look at the projects that have failed, why it has failed. Whether there was a problem from the government side or the institutional side, maybe the other line agencies. President Premadasa's time, when a man comes and gives an application for a garment factory, because he's the one who took this investment drive to the village. And before he reached Kolpiti Junction, there were 2-3 institutions would have called him to find out whether it's happening. What is the assistance that you need? But it doesn't happen today. But today people maybe, with this Yahapalana and the good governance, a lot of good things have happened. But with that, the independence that have been given to the public officials, they are misusing it. So there, the ministers, the government, the cabinet, they have a role to play. They have to be more sensitive. When somebody says, no, this can't be done or this should be done, they must find out why it should be done or why it should not be done.
Indeed. On that note, Upul Jayasuriya, thank you very much. We've run out of time. Thank you very much for coming here and sharing your thoughts. And that's the way it was on Newsline today. Do take care. Sorry about the overrun, and God bless.
Thank you.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.